papier-mâché? What is papier-mâché?
Paper Mario: The Origami King is a legitimately great game with very few caveats, but a couple of questionable design choices turn what could have been a full-on second coming that surpasses every entry before it into something that doesn't quite reach the heights of the Thousand Year Door. It is easily the best the series has been since Thousand Year Door though, and it still does many things straight up better than Thousand Year Door, but let's start with what it doesn't get quite right. The combat could be great if not for at least one terrible idea. It's a turn-based system with two phases. The actual combat phase plays out very typical of early Paper Mario games. You select an attack like boots or hammer, and you can press the A button with precise timing for greater damage. The other phase is brand new to the Origami King. It's essentially a puzzle. Enemies surround you on a series of rings, and it's your job to line or group them up with a limited number of moves. You can both rotate individual rings and slide entire rows, and some enemies have creative mechanics that add to the puzzle, like boos turning invisible or paper dolls folding out into many paper dolls when you rotate the rings. There is nothing inherently wrong with this system, it can actually be quite fun, but then they went ahead and put a time limit on this phase. Like I said earlier, it is essentially a puzzle. There is really no need at all for it to be a race against the clock. Little Town Hero also had a very puzzle-centric battle system, but it didn't give you a time limit. It allowed you to play around and figure out the puzzle. Isn't that the idea of a puzzle to begin with? To challenge the player with a circumstance that isn't obvious, the intent being that figuring it out will be satisfying. You do get access to accessories that increase the time limit, but even at maximum, I believe you're given just 70 seconds, and you can also pay money to add to the timer at any point, and I made use of this a lot, but you can't just throw money around every turn. It's an annoying additional step, and you're still left with the psychological effects of racing against a clock. Some of the enemy placements are so complex that many people wouldn't figure them out on their own if they had an infinite amount of time, even with the option to put red markers down that show you where to line the enemies up, which you don't unlock until after the 4th boss or so, if memory serves me correctly. And speaking of bosses, this time limit issue is even worse in boss fights. Boss fights are different in that the boss is in the center and you'll need to make your way around the rings to attack them using arrows and other symbols. There are arrows everywhere. There are often symbols you'll either need to hit or want to hit on your way through. You need to land on a specific symbol, sometimes in a specific location depending on the boss, and each boss has unique mechanics that can change the state of the board. These are immense puzzles all on their own. Say it with me, there is no need for time limits. It is truly a shame because the rest of the game is absolutely fantastic. The art style is exceptional. It's exceptional because they commit.
T.
Almost everything is made of paper, and the few things that aren't still feel like they fit into the world perfectly. The inclusion of origami to this world opened up a lot of opportunities, and they didn't waste any of them. Your main companion gets full-on magical girl cross mecha transformation sequences. It's incredible. Origami plays an important role in the story too, and I think it's the most compelling story in the series so far. There's a clear distinction between the flat paper characters and those that have been folded into origami. The Origami King wants to fold everyone into origami to rule the world, or at least that's what you're led to believe is his main motivation in the beginning. The lore of the world has never been stronger than in the Origami King. It feels like a real place that could really exist, and despite that, they're still able to have a lot of fun breaking the fourth wall. As we've come to expect from the series, the writing is phenomenal. I've laughed, giggled, and chuckled more times than I can remember, but it isn't just incredibly funny, it's also got some really hard-hitting moments and some very sad moments. Given the restrictions imposed on intelligent systems that basically mean they can't do the exact kind of thing they did back in Thousand Year Door, like making changes to existing Mario canon or adding to it, I found the bosses and new characters in Origami King to be very clever. We haven't returned to the land of 1,000 different shapes and sizes of toads because obviously at some point Nintendo decided that isn't how the toad species works, but there is a greater variety in toads and other well-known Mario characters in general than there has been in the more recent Paper Mario entries. Intelligent Systems made great use of costumes and outfits to make characters more distinct. One of my favourite areas is a Shogun Cinema theme park, and you'll see everything from toads to Koopas cosplaying in all kinds of different ways. Some of the bosses are giant origami monstrosities and others are stationary equipment, and as silly as that sounds, they just work. Like I said earlier, they really commit to the idea. The attention to detail is so fine. The case of coloured pencils speaks in rainbow colours. I'm convinced that the noise the rubber band man makes when he talks was made with rubber bands in real life. You just forget that they are pieces of stationery. They become their own characters and you never give it a second thought. If I had to describe the size and depth of the game and the world in one word, it would be ambitious. This game is much bigger than I expected. There are no official chapters, but you can broadly split the game up into streamers. The Origami King entombs Peach's castle in a series of streamers at the beginning of the game, and you'll need to travel all over the world to find where these streamers are coming from and destroy them. One of the streamers is essentially Zelda Wind Waker. You get a big grid map with islands, treasure and secrets to find while you're out on the open ocean. I already mentioned my favourite area, the Shogun Cinema themed amusement park. That's all part of the story and the big connected world. You don't get locked out of any of these places either, you're actually encouraged to go back and explore. Most of the areas are littered with collectibles, mini games and secrets which offer far more depth than just the main story does. I really don't know how to get this across in a better way, it's just so much larger and so much more than I ever expected it to be. This can sometimes lead to certain parts of the story or certain areas overstaying their welcome a little, but in general, the pacing is good. Perhaps the only thing I'd consider changing, other than removing the time limit from battles, is the way character progression works. A lot of people lament the loss of an RPG leveling system in the Paper Mario series. In Origami King, most of that leveling system from the Thousand Year Door is here. TTYD was very rudimentary in this way. You basically just got boosts to your max health and base attacks. You get these exact same things in a similarly paced way in the Origami King, but you don't level up to get them. Instead, you find heart items that increase your maximum health, and as your max health increases, so does the strength of your base attacks. I don't think it's a huge deal that a regular leveling system isn't part of Paper Mario anymore, but on the other hand, that system is basically here in this very game already. All they needed to do was add an extra tab to the character screen and award experience points instead of coins for battles. We, as gamers, hell, as people, like working towards something. We like micro goals and we like reaching milestones. It's such a tiny thing, but it would have made a big difference for a lot of people. To sum up, the Origami King is the best Paper Mario game ever made. Or at least, that is what I would have been saying if not for two relatively small flaws. Remove the time limits from battles, take that one tiny extra step and add leveling to the character progression system, and I could genuinely say that this is the best Paper Mario game. The look, the story, the world, and the writing, they've never been better than they are in the Origami King. You might get annoyed by the time limits, you probably disagree with their removal of the leveling system, but damn is this game still worth playing. You aren't always in battle. In fact, you are frequently running around doing RPG things for hours at a time, and almost everything the game throws at you is so charming you'll start to forget about its flaws altogether. I went in with very tempered expectations, but I was far from disappointed. It's not the most enjoyable gaming experience I've had this year, but it's certainly not the worst. It might surprise you just as much as it did me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.
Thanks for the liking, subscribing, and the sharing!